Next, academies. They're already controversial. Now, the Conservative leader in Leicestershire, David Parsons, is accusing the government of taxing local authorities to fund them, and he's demanding action, as Robin Powell reports.
It's a central plank of the government's education policy, persuading schools currently under the control of local authorities to convert to academy status. State-maintained but independently run, academies have more freedom to manage their own affairs. If Education Secretary Michael Gove has his way, they'll become the norm.
We've had a lot of arguments, a lot of excuses from those who don't believe in giving children a better education. It's time in response that we called them what they are, ideologues. Change is coming, and to those who want to get in the way, I have just two words: hands off.
But the old system of council-controlled schools seems to be serving Leicestershire very well. The county has a higher percentage of outstanding schools than anywhere else in the country. Leicestershire's Conservative leader has expressed reservations about the government's academies programme in the past. He now says he backs the idea in principle, but he's very concerned about the financial implications.
Effectively, there's a £100 tax on the local authority for every pupil that goes into an academy. That equates to about £10 million a year on our budget, and in times of economic restraint, that's a lot of money.
11% of schools in Leicestershire are either academies now or are applying to be. Academies are much less popular in Derbyshire, where the figure's 6%. In Nottinghamshire, 13% of schools are or want to be academies, and Lincolnshire has the highest proportion, around 20%. Academy status is clearly a highly sensitive issue. We found it very hard to pin down local authorities on what their official view is. Individual schools are especially reluctant to speak out. One head teacher told us on the telephone academy status would be a tragedy for the pupils of Leicestershire, but later pulled out of an interview he'd agreed to give us. But the executive principal here at Melton Vale Post 16 Centre has said he'd speak to us.
We've registered an interest with the Department for Education, which is the first step, and the governors have a meeting next week actually where they'll be considering where they want to take things forward.
What's your own view of academy status?
I think it's a great shame. I think we were stronger by being together, but the world has changed. The local authorities made that clear that they can no longer fulfil that role, and we need to go academy therefore.
Do you feel you're being left with no option?
Yes, absolutely.
The challenge now is to ensure that schools who prefer the status quo are not financially penalised. Leicestershire Council is working with local MPs to press the government for fairer funding.
Well, Ian Lever from the National Union of Teachers has joined us, and I want to know what you think of David Parsons' intervention on this in a moment. But Nicky Morgan, I have to ask you this first. You were one of the MPs who met David Parsons this week. Has he got a case?
Yeah, of course he's got a case. I mean, any local authority which is concerned about its funding and wants the case put to the government, absolutely, that's what the MPs are there for. We will go and put that to Michael Gove. Obviously, there's a lot of detail, and I think also caught up in it is the sort of historic underfunding of Leicestershire schools generally, which is contributing to this problem.
Surely, though, it's wrong that the government should expect councils to subsidise, in effect, academies.
Well, I think that is right, and I think that that's why the figures have got to be looked at. But it is part of a bigger debate. We're also in a position of change. Only I think 45% of Leicestershire schools are academies at the moment. So we are in that transitional period. But that's why the Secretary of State will want to hear the argument.
OK, well, Paul, should the Education Secretary Michael Gove give Leicestershire and other authorities the money that David Parsons says they're losing, in Leicestershire's case, £10 million?
Well, he won't do, because that's the whole point of the academy programme. It's to get schools to compete with each other, and the incentive to do that is to get a big lump sum from the LEA by opting out. Why a Conservative MP and a Conservative council leader should be surprised at that, I don't know. When the Tories introduced opted-out schools in the 1980s, that's exactly what the whole thing was based on. That's what academies are based on now. You opt out, you get money at the cost of other schools and of the LEA.
Simple.
Yeah.
OK, well, Ian, what do you make of David Parsons' intervention on this?
Well, I share the view there that it's baffling to me that this has come as some kind of big surprise, quite frankly, in that if you encourage schools to leave the local authority, take that lump of money with them, the local authority has less money left. And
it's simple maths.
Yeah, and every teacher will tell you that the best teaching is done by teachers working together collaboratively. The best schools are those schools that work with other schools in the area collaboratively and have the support of a local authority that's properly funded, so it's able to provide all the support that the schools need. And as soon as you start taking away the money, especially at a time when budgets are being cut anyway, of course they're not going to be able to afford to do that.
So, Nikki, they're basically saying, both of them are saying that you're missing something on this one.
Well, no,
you should have seen this coming.
Well, but I think the point is actually, as going back to historic underfunding, we're now, Leicestershire schools now get £650 per pupil less than schools in the city, so that's one particular issue. And there is also, we've got to check, obviously, the £50 figure which David Parsons has used and the £150 figure. So, we're waiting for details of that. And I was with Ian up until he talked about the fact it has to be under local education authority control. Schools in Loughborough Corner and Barrow, my constituency, are working together collaboratively. They're working on curriculum, the teachers are working together. I have to say, they've converted most of them, and they're working incredibly well. So I think it's it's a positive.
It's all going well.
Can I just say something about this issue of control, because it was mentioned twice in the film as well, and it's bandied around the whole time. Schools are not under local authority control. Schools receive support from local authorities, and what we're actually, one of the big carrots for schools, apparently, to be able to opt out of local authority control. In actual fact, what they are doing is moving away from the support that the local authority offers them, and I think we need to try and move away from that terminology, because it doesn't hold any water.
It doesn't hold any water.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure about that, because I think at the moment, obviously, when the money has come from the local education authority, then of course they've got more control. I mean, at the moment the schools can, and one of the things I think we've got to explore is whether there are services the local authority have already been offering, which the schools who become academies might still want to buy back from the local education authority because they're best at providing those services. But there are other things where actually my schools are saying we can get it cheaper from another provider. Someone like, we like to talk about broadband services.
Rather than control, though, is a local accountability, because it isn't just a local authority, one person sitting in an office deciding how money will be allocated. There are school forums on which all sorts of people, from head teachers to local politicians and so on, sit and decide how the money is going to be allocated. There's an accountability there which is not there, and you're going to end up with some kind of free-for-all of all the schools in an area doing their own thing, trying to outcompete each other for pupils.
That sounds very dangerous, doesn't it, Nikki? You don't really want that, do we?
Well, hang on a second, but what about the parents and the pupils? I mean, actually, this might be something about driving up, standards, and the fact that actually if you are competing with each other or working together, actually that can raise standards. And we're forgetting the pupils and the parents all this, plus the fact that actually it puts the head teacher in control for things like, say, teaching, but also discipline, as well as the curriculum. And again, my schools locally are saying we can offer perhaps a broader curriculum because we can all work together.
You're a former teacher.
This is just absolute nonsense. I mean, Ian was quite right in saying that local authorities do not control schools anymore. They did. When I was first working in Derbyshire in the 1980s, the local education authority, left-wing Labour at the time, under a man called David Bookbinder, micromanaged schools to a terrible extent. That's all ended with the 1988 Education Act. Schools are now controlled by whoever the Education Secretary is, currently Michael Gove, who's a right-wing ideologue sitting in London. He micromanages what schools are doing, not local authorities. And the competition business about it driving up standards, there is no evidence for that in any country in the Western world. Quite the contrary, in Sweden, where they've gone down this experiment for 15 years, they've found that you've had a drop in overall standards in attainment, because if you have schools competing in a free market, which is what the ideological approach is behind academies and free schools, then you have winners and losers instead of a collaborative approach.
But Paul, that isn't right. I mean, academies have shown that standards are going up, and you can't have it both ways.
No, academies have not shown that standards are going up whatsoever. There is no truth in that. There is no academic research to back it up.
You can't say local education authorities control schools or don't control, or Michael Gove controls them. You can't have it both ways, and saying the system we had was perfect and the system we're going to
I've never said the system we had was perfect. I'm saying that local authorities don't control schools and haven't done since the 1980s.
Isn't the danger here that, though, once schools have elected to become academies, there is no going back? So if it goes wrong, it goes wrong big.
There's no mechanism to go back, and that's quite deliberate, because the government, and the Labour government before, I have to say, didn't want people to go back. I mean, one of the other points that was touched on was, well, schools could still buy these services from the local authority, but one of the points is the local authority centrally keeps back 8–10% of the money to provide certain services, like in Derbyshire for deaf children, for autistic children, for travellers' children, that sort of thing. Now, if you've got a school in an affluent area that's got very low special educational needs and doesn't have behavioural problems from kids or from poor areas, they're not going to buy into those services. But the money won't be there to provide that central service for the schools that do need them. It's a very divisive, very destructive process.
And Nikki, one thing that really does worry people is that what does happen in a situation where something does go wrong, say like an academy has financial problems, you could end up, couldn't you, with a horrible scenario like the crisis involving Southern Cross Old People's Homes.
Yeah. But then what happened then the government came in that case the Department of Health, in this case it would be Department for Education, would come in, would work with management, would send in a school improvement team, and that's what they've done already with schools that are failing. That's what the DFE would do.
Which is the support that councils used to provide.
One of the other points I think that came out in the film there is the fact that there's no great enthusiasm for this in Leicestershire. There's no enthusiasm from parents. A lot of it is being rushed through, and it was speeded up by the very fact that Leicestershire County Council were saying you need to go for it now because there aren't going to be any services provided for you in 6 to 12 months' time.
So are some principals, like John Sherwin in our report that you saw, that they're left feeling that they have no option but to become academies? It's almost like they're being pressured into it.
Well, there is obviously strong encouragement. Leicestershire County Council do support the government in terms of, I mean, David Parsons has said this, schools becoming academies. I mean, they do have an option. They can just say no, and it's up to the governing bodies. I mean, they are the ones who work with the head teachers at the end of the day. But I think it is the right way to go. And as I say, I can say locally that it is an exciting time for my local schools in terms of the way they are running themselves. And I'm delighted. It's great to be working with them. They are really taking education forward.
Last word, Ian.
Deeply insulting to hear Michael Gove as well talking about those of us who've been teachers for many, many years not caring about the education of children. And he comes out with this kind of thing all the time. It's very insulting.
OK, well, Ian Lever, thank you very much for joining our debate. Time now for